You're sterile. I'm leaving. Her husband's words didn't just hurt, they instantly incinerated everything Amber had spent the last 7 years building. You can't have children, so I'm out, David said casually, his voice flat as he zipped his expensive leather suitcase. There was no anger in his tone, no regret. It was the same tone a corporate executive might use to close an underperforming branch or terminate an unprofitable contract. He didn't even look her in the eye, meticulously smoothing a crease from his flawless cashmere overcoat. David, but the doctor said there's still a chance. We just need to wait, try a different clinic, try one more time. Amber stood in the middle of their massive sunlit living room. Even her own voice sounded unfamiliar, like the rustling of dry autumn leaves. We've been trying for 4 years, Amber. He cut her off, finally lifting his cold, steel-gray eyes to meet hers. I'm 35. I want an heir, a real family. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life chasing fertility specialists and throwing millions of dollars at false hope. My decision is final. You can stay in the apartment for 3 months while you find another place. The lawyers will handle the divorce. The front door closed with a quiet but terrifyingly final click. Amber was alone. The spacious luxury penthouse instantly transformed into a tomb. She slowly sank onto the cold hardwood floor, wrapped her arms around her knees, and screamed, silently. The shock had stolen even her voice. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of supporting him, helping him build his career, and standing beside him while they created a successful life together. Amber had willingly sacrificed her own dream of becoming an interior designer so David could focus entirely on his ambitions. And the moment a respected fertility specialist delivered the devastating diagnosis, low ovarian reserve, almost no chance of natural conception, David discarded her as if she were a defective product. The first week passed in a blur. She barely slept. Food tasted like cardboard. She ignored every call from friends, keeping the blinds tightly shut while the steady ticking of the wall clock counted down the seconds of her broken life. On the 10th day, she caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back had hollow eyes, dark circles beneath them, and skin so pale it looked almost translucent. If I give up now, he wins. The thought appeared with startling clarity. He threw me away because he believes I'm nothing without him. But I was someone before I met him, and I'll be someone after him. Amber turned the shower handle all the way to cold. She cut off her long hair, replacing it with a sharp but textured bob that framed her face. She threw away everything in the apartment that reminded her of David, including the expensive espresso machine he had once spent hours choosing. She needed something to keep both her hands and her mind occupied. Then she remembered her first love, creating handcrafted porcelain sculptures and collectible art dolls. Before her marriage, her work had won awards at gallery exhibitions. She opened her laptop, contacted old friends from the local art community, and rented a small but charming studio in the city's historic arts district. 2 days later, she moved out. She left the keys to David's apartment on the entryway console and walked away carrying only her clothes and a single box of professional art supplies. Work became her therapy. Amber spent days and nights inside the studio. The scent of clay, plaster, acrylic paint, and herbal tea slowly pushed the suffocating fear of loneliness out of her heart. The sculptures she created were extraordinary. Each porcelain face carried quiet elegance, while the eyes seemed almost alive, filled with sorrow, strength, and silent resilience. Exactly 1 month after David had walked away, Amber had changed completely. She had lost weight, but it was the healthy, graceful kind that came from rebuilding herself rather than falling apart. The confidence had returned to her eyes, and her new haircut perfectly emphasized her high cheekbones. Her close friend Christina, who owned one of the city's leading contemporary art galleries, insisted that Amber present the new collection at an exclusive charity gala. Your work is a perfect blend of pain and beauty, Christina said excitedly. Collectors are going to compete for these pieces tonight. Important buyers will be there. No excuses. Wear your best dress and be here by 7. Amber chose a minimalist black silk gown that fell to the floor, leaving her shoulders bare beneath a perfectly tailored tuxedo jacket. No flashy jewelry, no dramatic makeup, only the quiet confidence she had rebuilt, one day at a time. The gala was already in full swing. Guests wandered between the exhibits with glasses of champagne, while a live jazz quartet filled the gallery with soft music. Amber stood beside her display, explaining the inspiration behind a sculpture called The Waiting Room to an elderly philanthropist. Then she felt it, a familiar gaze, heavy, intense. It burned between her shoulder blades. Goosebumps spread across her skin. She slowly turned around. David stood less than 20 feet away, but he wasn't alone. Clinging possessively to his arm was a young blonde woman who looked no older than 22. She wore an expensive designer dress in bright, attention-grabbing colors and chatted nonstop, but David wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed entirely on Amber. His mouth had fallen slightly open. Shock, disbelief, admiration, confusion. Every emotion flashed across his face at once. He had expected to find a broken woman, someone crying through divorce proceedings, begging lawyers for alimony, unable to survive without him. He had been convinced that without his money and status, Amber would disappear. Instead, she had become the center of the evening. Elegant, confident, surrounded by respected collectors and influential guests. Amber politely excused herself from the philanthropist, took a slow breath, lifted her chin, and walked directly toward her ex-husband. "Hello, David," she said calmly. She stopped only a step away from him. Her perfume carried rich notes of vanilla and tobacco, a fragrance completely different from the soft floral scent she used to wear. "Amber." David struggled to find the right words. His companion looked Amber up and down with obvious irritation. You look incredible. I never expected to see you here. What are you doing at an event like this?" Amber smiled faintly. "This is my exhibition, David." She gestured toward the collection of porcelain sculptures. Or rather, an exhibition of my work. At that moment, a tall, distinguished man in his late 30s approached them. Silver touched his temples, giving him an air of effortless confidence. It was Marcus, a renowned architect and the principal sponsor of the evening's gala. "Amber, there you are," Marcus said warmly, resting a gentle protective hand on the small of her back. "The director of the City Arts Council is fascinated by your sculpture, Nymph." He asked if I'd introduce him to the artist. David's expression changed instantly. His fingers tightened around his champagne glass until his knuckles turned white. "David, this is Marcus," Amber said politely. "Marcus, this is David, my ex-husband." The two men exchanged a brief but unmistakably tense handshake. David tried to project the same confident authority that had always impressed clients and colleagues. Standing beside Marcus, however, his confidence suddenly felt forced, polished, and strangely artificial. "Nice to meet you," David muttered. Then he turned back to Amber. "We need to talk. Alone. Just for a few minutes." Marcus glanced at Amber, silently asking whether she was comfortable. She gave him a small, reassuring nod. He stepped away but remained close enough to keep them within sight. David's date, realizing she had become completely irrelevant, rolled her eyes and headed toward the open bar. David led Amber toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city skyline. "What is all this, Amber?" he asked, and the familiar commanding tone crept back into his voice. Strangely, it no longer intimidated her. It almost amused her. "An architect, your own exhibition? You walked out of the penthouse without taking anything." "I thought you were." "Losing my mind?" Amber finished for him. "Crying on a therapist's couch in some tiny apartment?" She smiled politely. "Sorry to disappoint you." David studied her face in silence. For the first time, he truly saw what he had lost. The old Amber, the obedient wife whose life revolved around fertility appointments and ovulation calendars, was gone. Standing before him was someone entirely different. Confident, interesting, unpredictable, and suddenly he wanted her back. "Amber." His voice softened as he stepped closer. "Maybe I overreacted. I was under enormous pressure that night. The restructuring at work, your diagnosis, everything became too much. We spent 7 years together. Let's have dinner tomorrow. Just talk. I've been thinking about that private fertility clinic in Boston. I still have connections there. I can arrange everything." Amber looked at him quietly. In that moment, the final fragments of what she had once mistaken for love simply disappeared. David had never loved her. He loved comfort, control, status, the image of the perfect family. He wasn't trying to win her back because he missed her. He wanted her back because his ego couldn't accept seeing her happy without him. Amber took one calm step backward. You know, David, she said softly, there was one thing you told me that night that was absolutely true. Your decision was final. And you were right. We really didn't have a future. Amber, don't be ridiculous, he replied quickly. Who is this, Marcus? Some rebound? Is this whole transformation just your way of getting revenge on me? Amber laughed. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't bitter. It was genuine. Revenge? She said. David, you really think you're the center of everyone's universe. I didn't rebuild my life because of you. I rebuilt it because of me. She opened her evening clutch and removed a small USB flash drive. Without saying another word, she placed it in his hand. He frowned. What's this? My latest medical report. I went to one of the country's leading reproductive endocrinologists 2 weeks ago for a complete evaluation. It turns out my so-called low ovarian reserve wasn't permanent at all. It was caused by a severe hormonal imbalance triggered by years of chronic emotional stress. She paused. And by the experimental medication your trusted family doctor kept prescribing. David stared silently at the flash drive. My hormone levels are completely normal now, Amber continued. I'm perfectly healthy. I can have children. She looked directly into his eyes. But never with you. Never. She turned and walked away. Her heels clicked softly across the polished gallery floor. Marcus was already waiting near the exit, holding her coat. He smiled, a warm, sincere smile that asked for nothing and expected nothing. Together, they walked into the cool evening air. David remained standing alone beside the window. The flash drive suddenly felt impossibly heavy in his hand. Her words echoed through his mind. He watched the woman he had dismissed as broken disappear into a future where he no longer belonged.